So last week we asked the question, what is the first thing we do when we notice a heavy emotion show up? This week, I have another question for you. What happens after the emotion? We've spent this whole month talking about becoming more aware of what we're feeling. We've talked about letting go of what no longer serves us. We've practiced sitting with emotions instead of immediately trying to fix them, push them away, explain them, or overanalyze them. We've even talked about allowing them to move through us instead of getting stuck. Eventually, they do move. Maybe not all at once, maybe not neatly, but eventually the wave kind of begins to settle. So then what? Do we just move on with our lives and just do the next thing? Do we pretend like it didn't happen? Do we just ignore what we became aware of, like that's all there is to it? Well, if you've been around the channel or if you've seen the 8 Skills of Mindfulness series, you know there is more to mindfulness than just awareness. Awareness isn't where it stops, it's kind of just where it starts. Let's talk about it. Hello, and welcome to Torches, Yoga and Mindfulness. I'm Lauren, and I'll be your coach. If you are curious about mindfulness, healing, and practical habits that actually work for your life, you're in the right place. Here we focus on simple but powerful practices grounded in ancient wisdom and modern science to care for both our mind and body. So go ahead, hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. So awareness is where choice begins. And I mention that a lot, that awareness brings us to choice, but I don't talk much about after we get to that place of choices. That can make it seem like the goal is to become someone who is just really emotionally aware. Like we're just working to get to a point where we can name what we're feeling, understand what we're feeling, and maybe we can even pinpoint what childhood or old experience contributed to it. And being able to see all that is absolutely valuable and part of the process. But awareness by itself doesn't necessarily change our lives. There comes a moment when we have to ask, now that I know what's here, how do I move forward? That's where mindfulness transforms from something we practice in our body scans, our gratitude practices, savoring, or journaling, and it transforms into something we practice in conversations, in relationships, in difficult decisions, and just on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Sometimes emotions seem like obstacles while we're just trying to get through life, but with a little mindfulness, they become participants. The challenging part is, without realizing it, we are assigning them jobs they were never meant to have. Anger shows up and we ask it to enact punishment, either to ourselves or someone else. Sadness shows up and we sit with it until it convinces us to quit. We experience shame and force it into a position to hold our identity. And even excitement, when it comes around, we put all our eggs in that basket, asking the excitement to guarantee our success. If any of those sound familiar, you haven't done something wrong. This isn't a statement on what's good or bad, right or wrong. This is just what it is to be human. But imagine each one of these emotions standing in line at the HR office, holding their resume. Excitement lists its skills as a guide for exploration. Shame asks us to reconnect with our values. Sadness asks us to slow down a bit, and anger is a top performer in noticing and notifying us when a boundary has been crossed. And fear, we ask fear to make decisions for us when it's really just a helpful compass. Let's talk about fear for a second, because there are so many different ways it shows up and dictates our lives. But fear is actually pretty incredible. Its job is to notice uncertainty, to recognize that something important, unfamiliar, or potentially risky is happening. And all that is really useful. But somewhere along the way, we promoted fear from just a messenger to a primary decision maker. Like when fear shows up, it's trying to just say, hey, this matters. We need to pay attention. But we somewhere stopped taking the message as something to consider and started asking fear to decide if we should try the scary thing at all. We hand it the steering wheel. Maybe you've wanted to apply for a new job, have an honest conversation with someone you love, start a creative project, set a boundary, or just any time you've thought about trying something that you've never done before, And fear shows up, which makes total sense because we're moving into unfamiliar territory. But again, instead of reading it as a message that this is meaningful enough that our nervous system is paying attention, we interpret it as abort mission. We mistake discomfort for direction. We get that this isn't what I'm used to feeling, and we run the other way. Don't get me wrong. If you were ever walking down a deserted street and you keep feeling like someone's following you and someone's eyes are on you, or in your safety in any way is on the line, fear is there to tell us to stay alert because we might need to run. But sometimes fear isn't telling us to stop. It's just trying to tell us we are standing at the edge of growth. Maybe the scary thing isn't going to work out just as you have planned, but something in that experience itself is worth meeting. A practice I really like to use to help me move with the emotions instead of letting them take the wheel is one I call the and practice. For instance, let's say fear has come up. So I'm going to say, I'm afraid, and I'm going to do the thing anyway. Or if there's a hurt, I'm hurting and I still want to have this conversation kindly and with compassion. Or if I'm disappointed and I still want to show up. This is coexistence instead of elimination. Listening to fear and really all our emotions in this way with curiosity, asking it what it is we need to pay attention to instead of whether or not to do something or take action somewhere in our lives, is a very different kind of relationship with them. Instead of trying to get rid of it or see it as an obstacle to overcome, we can learn to work with it. And the same is true for anger. Anger gets a bad reputation and blamed for so much because we have all seen what happens when someone speaks through anger. When anger is driving a conversation, it becomes more about winning, blaming, proving, and protecting. But underneath the anger, there's usually something more important: our values, a hurt, a crossed boundary. So, not to fully relive it, but for a moment, bring to mind a time when someone said something to you that really hurt, or a time you said something you know hurt another. What was that remark trying to protect? Speaking through anger sounds like you always do this, you never listen, you don't do that, I can't believe you. But speaking with the hurt under the anger sounds more like, when that happened, it hurt me. Notice the emotion didn't disappear. We don't pretend the hurt didn't happen. It just got a different job. The goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to let the emotion inform the conversation instead of control it. And like I said before, I think all of our emotions show up to bring us information in one way or another. Sadness may be reminding us that something mattered to us. Jealousy reveals something we're secretly longing for. Frustration can point towards something that needs to be changed or addressed. And guilt can gently ask us whether our action still align with the kind of person we want to be. And really, our issue isn't the emotions or us misunderstanding them. More often than not, when emotions show up, our ego grabs the mic, and that is rarely a good thing. But that's another conversation for another time. Emotions aren't the final answer. They bring information in for us to consider, reflect on, and weigh. Information isn't instruction, but they are asking really good questions. Picture your emotions like I do with a resume. Anger says, I specialize in boundaries. Grief helps us honor what we loved. Joy says, I'm here to point towards what nourishes you and brings life. They're all qualified to contribute, but they're not qualified to be the CEO. That position should be held by our personal values. Let's actually try something else together right now. Recall again a strong emotion maybe that you felt this week or recently. Not to relive the moment or to add more to the story, just to recall and notice the emotion that came up. Now, picture that emotion sitting across the table from you, ready for an interview. They're wearing their business casual best and clutching their resume and their notes. And we're going to ask it 3 questions. What are you here to help me notice? What would happen if I ignored you? And what job are you actually qualified to do? So notice, we are not asking it what decision we should make, because that's not the emotion's job. And for me, that's where mindful action begins. Asking the questions we've been asking throughout this month of what am I feeling or where am I feeling? That's the noticing part, so that we can bring our emotion into our awareness and ourselves out of the autopilot. But once we can see it, then what, right? Because for me, there have absolutely been days where I wake up and I'm just kind of low key pissed all day. There may not have necessarily been anything that triggered it. Maybe it was a bad night's sleep. Maybe I'm hungry or dehydrated or dealing with hormone fluctuations. But I've had those days and just thought, you know what? I'm just going to roll with it. Now, I'll keep my mouth shut if I don't have anything nice to say, but I just let it be there and see how it shows up as I go about my day. I'm not saying I recommend that. It's definitely not one of our mindful living practices. I'm just saying I'm human, and that's just how it goes sometimes. But anyway, back to what I was saying before. Once we've noticed and we are aware, then we start to ask, what is this emotion trying to show me? Answers can show up quickly with emotions. Emotions want to be heard. It's that first thing that pops into your head before you can overthink it, dismiss it, justify it, or judge it. When we see what the emotion is trying to show us, then we have the information we need to be able to ask another question. What action feels most aligned with the person I am trying to be? Sometimes that action is resting, moving forward, apologizing, walking away, staying, or having the uncomfortable conversation. But the beautiful and frustrating part is that mindfulness ends at that question. It doesn't make the decisions for us. It's like a compass, and you still have to decide which direction to go. But what mindfulness does do for us is create enough space that we can choose from our values instead of our reflexes. Now, before we wrap up, I do have one more practice I want to share with you for for you to try this week, especially for my journalers out there. For this practice in your journal or just any old notebook, you are going to make 2 columns on the page. And whenever a big emotion has shown up, you're going to log it here. But do not write your entire life story here. Column 1 is going to be, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Only write 1 sentence. Don't sit there for half an hour trying to pick the right sentence or figure out how to cram 10 sentences into one long run-on. Just one, the first honest answer that comes to mind. Then in column 2, if my values made the next decision instead of this emotion, what would I do? And the same thing as before, not some deep dive in investigation, just the first real answer that comes to you. And then that's it. Do not keep writing. Don't keep reviewing. Just close the journal, close your notebook, and move on with your day. This kind of practice gives that experience somewhere else besides your noggin to live in, and it prevents us from overanalysis. All right, friend. This month, we have been exploring the relationship between fire and water. Water knows how to flow. It teaches us acceptance, adaptability, and softness, but that doesn't mean it's passive. Given enough time, it shapes landscapes, it carves canyons, and nourishes forests. It changes the world not by force, but by moving with intention, and invites us to do the same. And flowing through life doesn't mean we just drift along like tra-la-la-la-la. It's about learning what we're carrying, what we want to release, and what to move forward toward. There are moments when life asks us to soften, and moments when it asks us to act. Mindfulness doesn't make the choice, and it's not necessarily asking us to choose one or the other. Mindfulness helps us to learn to recognize what this moment is asking for. So this week, instead of asking, how do I stop feeling? Try instead, what job am I giving this emotion? Is it fear making our decisions, anger writing our words, or shame telling me who I am? And even more, can you thank the emotion for what it is trying to show you, and then let your values decide what happens next? Becoming emotionally healthy doesn't mean we stop having difficult emotions. It means we stop fighting them long enough to hear what they're saying and trying to tell us and show us. And once we listen, we are free to choose our next step. That doesn't mean it won't be scary sometimes or that our decision will be the perfect one. It just means we move with intention instead of reaction. And those small intentional choices repeated over and over again are what quietly reshape our lives. Friend, thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with me. Stay present, stay kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.